that's going to take the blunt of it. It's not the Jewish people as a whole. The Jewish people as a whole weren't persecuted. It was just that those who had personally crucified Jesus and cried out for his blood, and said that his blood be upon us and our children, that took the blunt of it. It wasn't Jewish people as a whole. God doesn't have anything against the Jewish people as a whole. There was Jewish people throughout the world at this time, and like it says that he gave them 2 wings of an eagle and brought her to the desert. That means away from the land of Israel. People around away from the land of Israel didn't have any trouble at all. The Romans didn't persecute the Jews. They only destroyed the land of Israel for 3.5 years, and then after that, when he saw that he couldn't, wipe out the Jewish people, he turned his sights on those people, on the woman's children who believed in Jesus, would be the Christian Jews. That's where he turned his sights on. So the Jewish people as a whole were not wiped out. The 12 tribes that were already scattered out without physically being thrown out of Jerusalem, and they weren't touched by it. It was only the land of Israel that took the blunt of it. Satan spewed out his water, but the land soaked it up. It took like the brunt of it instead of the Jews at large, because all the Jews, there was at the time of Jesus, there was more Jews in Alexandria, Egypt, than there was actually in Jerusalem. So the Jews were already in different parts of the world, and they weren't touched by it.
So because of the scattering, that's the land soaking it up.
Well, no, the land soaking it up is when Israel took the wrath, or they were destroyed. Remember, the dragon is Satan working through Rome. So Rome never persecuted the Jews. The Jews were always allowed to have their own gods. The Romans didn't see a problem with people worshiping their own gods as long as they acknowledged Caesar as their head, which is why throughout the New Testament they're always saying, are you going to pay taxes to Caesar? Are you going to, was Jesus another king? They didn't care. Like when Paul got, he was arrested and in Acts, and they went up before time after time different Roman officials, and they're like, they'd speak about names or words, and a dead man that came to life. They weren't concerned about it because they only wanted to know, is he loyal to the emperor, which he was as a as a subject. So Rome never persecuted Christians. They did persecute Christians only once, and that is mentioned in the book of Acts. Priscilla and Aquila had to leave Rome because he says no Jews can live in Rome. So they were prejudiced against him, but even then he didn't kill them, and it wasn't throughout the empire. It was just in Rome. He says, I don't want any Jews here. So the only people that were persecuted or killed in such a bloody, terrible way was the Jews who rejected Christ that remained in Jerusalem. Jesus said, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, leave. If you stay behind, it's your own fault. Basically, those took the brunt, and then after that, it was directed towards the Jewish Christians specifically at that time, because remember the harlot Jerusalem, false Jerusalem, is riding on the back of the beast, and they both harm the Christians. And so the Jewish people that were persecuting Christians weren't concerned about the Gentile Christians. They were concerned about the Jewish Christians. That's why it says that they went to war against the Jewish people, or the seed of the woman, which is Israel, and they both Rome and the false Israel. The Jews who rejected Christ both tried to persecute the Jewish believers, but eventually it spread to anyone who professed Christ. But originally it started with Jewish believers. So that's what it's talking about. Okay. Verse 14, it says, the serpent spewed out water like a river out of its mouth after the woman in order to sweep her away in the flood, but the land came to her rescue. It opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon had spewed out of its mouth. The dragon was infuriated over the woman and went off to fight the rest of her children i.e., those who obey God's commands and bear witness to Jesus. And there's actually a verse here, and well, like I said before, Revelation has, more than any other book in the Bible, has more variations in the text than any other book of the Bible. So some translations or some versions will have an 18th verse, which says, "Then the dragon stood on the seashore." But the King James doesn't have that verse, but some manuscripts do. So it says, "Then the dragon stood on the seashore," and in 13 verse 1 it says, "And I saw the beast come out of the sea," etc. But we'll cover that tomorrow. However, I before we stop here, I just want to read in Acts here something I found today that I think is very interesting. You see throughout the New Testament that they're prophesying about the destruction of the temple. In Acts 6, Acts 6:11, talking about the stoning of Stephen when they get people together. 11. They suborned men, meaning they hired men, which said, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and against God." Well, that's not true. Stephen didn't blaspheme God. Neither did he say Moses was wrong. And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council, and set up false witnesses, which said, "This man ceases not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law." Well, he wasn't against the law. It says that they were false witnesses. Neither did he say that the temple was a bad place. You find in Luke and you find in Acts that they went to the temple regularly to pray. And Luke, the end of Luke, the last verse in Luke, it says, "And they were continually in the temple praising and blessing God." Peter and John went to pray in the temple in the hour of prayer. So they still held on to the old way of doing things. As far as like they worshipped at the temple, they did not say it was an evil place. It was a holy place, because God still dwelt there. In verse 14, "We have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place," meaning the temple, "and shall change the customs which Moses delivered to us." Okay, so now they're interpreting something. They said he speaks words against this holy place and the law, and they say what he actually said. "For we have heard him say that Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place," which Stephen did say. Christ is going to destroy this place, "and shall change the customs which Moses delivered to us." Well, yeah, he did. You don't have to be circumcised anymore. You don't have to keep to the ceremonial way. But see, they apply to Jesus destroying that place as saying that he condemned the holy place, speaking blasphemy against it, and by saying that they're going to change the customs Moses handed down to them, that he's speaking against the law, but he didn't do. They interpreted that. So, and all they did in the council looked steadfastly on him and saw his face as it had been the face of an angel. And 7 verse 1 says, "And the high priest said, Are these things so? And did you condemn the temple, saying that you're going to destroy it and all that?" That Jesus is going to destroy it. So he goes on a long story about how time and time again Israel has rejected God, even though God did this and that for them. They rejected him. And then finally in verse 47, it says, "But Solomon built him a house," meaning God. Solomon built God at the temple. "Howbeit the Most High dwells not in temples made with hands, as says the prophet, Heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool. What house will you build me, saith the Lord, or what is the place of my rest?" So he's finally getting around. He's finally answering the question the high priest said to him: "Are these things true? Did you say that the temple is going to be destroyed?" And he says, "God doesn't dwell in that temple." He finally gets to the end of it. He goes around, and he says, God doesn't dwell here to begin with, as far as like completely. He goes, "You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you who always resist the Holy Ghost, as your fathers did, so do you. Which of the prophets have your fathers not persecuted? They have slain them which showed before the coming of the just one or righteous one, of whom you have been now betrayers and murderers. You have received the law by the disposition of angels that have not kept it." So he's saying yes, this place is gonna this temple is gonna be destroyed because why? You have killed all the prophets and you did the greatest worst thing by killing the one that was finally sent to you. Remember the parable of the vineyard? He sent prophets and they stoned some, cast them out of the vineyard, and he said, "I'll send on my son." He sent on his son. They said, "Hey, look, this is the heir of the vineyard. Let's kill him, and it'll be ours." And it says, "What will the owner of the vineyard do? He will send his servants, and they will burn that city and give it to other people who will bring them their fruits in their season." So again, it's the same analogy that he's saying you rejected him. This place is going to be destroyed. I just thought I would bring that up as another verse about AD 70. So that's it.